Hello, friend. Thanks for pressing play on this episode of the Brassy Broadcast. I'm Jen Eads, the head broad in charge at the Brassy Broadcasting Company. To say that 2020 has been a year of moments that have become movements would be an understatement. It feels like there's been an awakening of sorts, as we've seen several movements gain momentum. My guest today is Terri Broussard Williams. She's a movement maker, Firestarter, and artful persuader. Terri is an advocate of servant leadership that believes nonprofits and social enterprises are change agents for very important causes and movements. As a lobbyist, she has witnessed firsthand the power that policy changes can have within a movement. She's also the author of Find Your Fire and host of Movement Maker, the podcast. And we talk a little bit about how that podcast got started. Shout out to our mutual friend, Lisa Mitchell, for connecting us. In this episode, Terri helps us learn how to recognize moments in our own lives with the potential to become movements, how to start building coalitions, and how faith and fortitude are at the core of everything that she does. Our conversation was recorded in the week after the 2020 presidential election. We jump right into the conversation talking about lobbyists and what they do, because often lobbyists are made to sound awful in political ads leading up to the election. So I wanted her take. Here's Terri Broussard Williams. So can we talk about lobbying? Because coming off this election, you hear in so many ads, so-and-so's in the pocket of all the lobbyists in D.C., and it sounds like this really horrible thing. Explain what a lobbyist does from your perspective, because you are a lobbyist, and I feel like you do a lot of lobbying for good things.
Lobbyists are individuals that give elected officials or decision makers. They're not always elected. Sometimes they could be, a deputy director of a department at a state, or they could be a commissioner at a city level. But a lobbyist gives people that make decisions information about whatever issue they are advocating for and asks them to vote yes or no to support that issue. So lobbying is different from advocating. When you're advocating, usually you're supporting an issue and giving people access to information as well. But when you're lobbying, you're making that direct ask for a yes or no tied to legislation. And so there are many different types of lobbyists because there's so many different industries, not just in our country, but in the world. There are lobbyists all over the world. And so there are lobbyists for good. And I have chosen to be one of those. And so most oftentimes I talk about my role at the American Heart Association, where I lobbied for 16 years. And I like to think I was always on the right side of history there.
One of the things you worked on was lobbying to pass a major no-smoking bill in Louisiana that would restrict smoking in public places like restaurants. What was that like to work on something of that magnitude?
That piece of legislation was actually the first time that I felt that I was a leader that could turn a moment into a movement. I was part of a coalition of young female lobbyists, all under the age of 30.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, looking back, and even then, I think that a lot of people underestimated our strategy and our hustle, and they did not expect us to pass the bill. And that is how we got ahead. And so we worked tirelessly, blood, sweat, and tears to pass that legislation. And it was really not about restricting smoking. We wanted to create smoke-free environments, yes. But we did it so that the workers who were in that environment did not have to choose between their health and a paycheck. So it was all about protecting them from secondhand smoke. And so from there, I moved to Texas to lead the very same initiative. And we went city by city, taking Texas from 35 cities with smoke-free laws to 105 in about 3 years.
Oh my gosh.
Talk about a movement.
Right. So let's talk about that too, because you're the author of Find Your Fire, Stories and Strategies to Inspire the Change Maker in You, and you're hosting this the Movement Maker podcast. How do you build these coalitions? Like, what are some of the practices that you have to actually build these coalitions, to make these changes?
And I want to interrupt just for like a PSA all about you. So, I mean, we have to talk about this a little bit and then I'll answer your question.
Okay.
But I was so curious about podcasts, not because I wanted to be the serious podcaster, but I knew that some of the stories might resonate better with people by voice and ear. And some of the stories were worth amplifying, like having on paper, having an option for people to read on a computer or to listen. And so I remember calling you and just asking questions and being so curious. And I was just not going to do it because it's so overwhelming for me. I have like all the things on the plate all the time, not tech savvy, and just could not wrap my head around like how to even take one bite of that elephant. And you were like, just do it. You were like, it's so easy. Just do it. So there would be no Movement Maker podcast if there were no you.
Oh,
so
thank you.
I mean that. But so coalitions, it's just like the coalition that you and I have, right? You were there to amplify my movement, to support my movement, and you've helped me build my movement. And so those three very pieces are the tenets of what's needed to build a coalition. But you also have to do it from a place where people, you know, and I'll use the Firestarter formula to break it down.
Oh, perfect.
The first thing is cause. And so you have to have the same core values and similar mission. They don't have to be the same, but they really need to work parallel. And that will allow you to see if either the individuals, organizations, or associations are right for you to start a coalition with. And then you're really going to build that collective, that coalition, where you're going to create a list of people that are going to be a part of your movement to further that cause. And you will do it from a place where that table is really long and wide. And again, you have the same core values. Because you have to speak from your head and your heart. And if those things aren't in alignment, your movement's going to fall flat. Then the third thing is that you are going to begin to communicate. And if you are really good coalition partners, that communication is going to happen internally and externally. Internally, you're going to want to make sure that you understand the deal breakers, the things that all of you will walk away from the table, like your coalition will collapse. And you want to talk about them and understand them so that you can avoid any obstacles or conflict. But at the same time, you should expect and accept conflict because we're humans, right? And you're also going to want to communicate about the wins that are needed for your organization. And when you can strategize and plan around what people need to bring back home a win, but also win with their boss and win with their donors. Again, we're humans. We have to feed our ego, even though we don't want ego at the forefront of the coalition table, but we want to check a box off for our performance objectives or to get a good report card from our donors. So you're going to talk about that and look at it from a place of abundance and not loss or loss of power. And then you're going to talk externally. You're going to talk to the community about that coalition you're building and ask them to be cultural ambassadors, to be an extension of your group so that they can amplify the work that you're doing. And then last, you're going to work on the change. This is where you're going to come together on that project and work to go from idea to implementation so your movement can come to life.
I love it.
Yeah, and I love alliteration. Did you hear all the alliteration?
Oh, I'm such a fan. That's why we're friends. One of the things that I love every time I get an email from you is your email sign off is with faith and fortitude. And I feel like that is your kind of driving mantra. What does that mean to you and why?
Oh my gosh, yes, it is. It's definitely my North Star. Faith is a reminder to me that, what I am doing is so bigger than just me. The work that I do, just when I show up in any space, but also the work that I do tied to Movement Maker, the platform, is bigger than me. We're not here forever. I believe that we're really, really here to have impact while we're on this earth. And fortitude is just knowing there's always a way. Like, there's so many excuses that we can have to not do something. We could see an obstacle and let it stop us, let it intimidate us. Or we can just say, like, that's not my, what's the saying? Not my monkey, not my circus. Oh. Exactly. But so you might feel like it's not you, but there's always a way, and there's always a way for you to be tied to the work. So I truly believe that everyone, but for me, that I choose to approach everything with faith and fortitude.
What practices do you have? Like, whether it's a daily practice, because I know for me right now, my meditation and my journaling, that is what is absolutely 100% keeping me grounded. What practices do you have? Like, do you have a set morning routine? What's working for you?
Life has changed so much since March of 2020, since we've been in quarantine because of the pandemic. Mm-hmm. So the things that I do right now that keep me straight, there are a couple of things. Some are trite, some are very personal, and some just give structure to a routine that I had before. Mm-hmm. And so, every day I get up, I still do my hair and makeup like I was going to leave the house.
Really?
Can't really tell because it's the end of the day, Jen. We're recording, but I got some mascara on.
Oh, I can see. You look fabulous.
All the things. Hair curled. Now, these might be yesterday's curls, but it's still curled. And so I get dressed, I have on a full outfit. I even have on tennis shoes that are, they're more like kids, not like sneakers. And that helps me just remember life still exists. Mm-hmm. I still have a purpose. I still have to show up. As we say, I'm a former cheerleader, full out. Sometimes you would just kind of like mark the cheer, and other times you'd be full out. So life is to be lived full out right now. Then on Mondays, for the past 2 months, I've been part of a mindfulness class. And so I've been really, really practicing mindfulness for about 2 years now. Yes. I learned about it exactly a week before my 40th birthday. Now I'm telling my age. But so for 2 years, but I am doubling down on it and spending 90 minutes every Monday in a class. And I always leave so relaxed and sleep so well on Monday nights. So I'm trying to figure out how might I do more of that throughout the week. And then the thing that is tied to my routine pre-COVID is I go to the hair salon every Saturday and get a blowout.
Do you really?
I do. And so that's just, and I didn't go when we were in lockdown. Mm-hmm. So, let's put that on the record. But it still allows for me to get out of the house, which I don't get out the house much. And it still allows me to give back to the economy and a small business. And again, it's just structure that I had pre-COVID because I was always on the road, for speaking. And so
right,
a blowout would last for me for some time. So yeah, and it actually brings me comfort.
Oh, I totally understand. I miss going to the salon and getting a pedicure.
Yes. Although I've learned how to do that since March.
Yeah, I'm not that talented. I've attempted it. It did not look pretty. But I tried.
But also learned how to glue eyelashes, which it was a goal of mine for 2020, but I'm not sure it would have happened had I not been on lockdown and had the opportunity to practice every single day.
Love it. One of the things I wanted to ask you too is how do you identify a moment that can be turned into a movement? Because I've really, again, we are, post-election this week. And I think about Stacey Abrams and the impact that we've seen her have in Georgia.
Yes.
I mean, she could have just been like, I'm done.
Perfect example. Screw it, right?
Yeah.
But it's someone who had faith.
Right.
She knew that she was here for something so much bigger. Mm-hmm. And if you do not win, the answer is not to give up. Because if you have faith, you really believe in that. The answer is to find another way. And so I've just been really reflecting on her leadership. And I've known this has been happening for a while because I know a lot of people that are working with Fair Vote in Georgia. But It's remarkable. And so I think for us, we will not all be Stacey Abrams. We will not all flip a state from red to blue. And not all movements are big, So it really is something that you feel called to do. It's something that a lot of times you can't stop thinking about it. But, for some people, it might just be turning that line Starbucks into a contagion by paying for the next person's car.
Uh-huh.
And that might put a smile on everyone's face for that day and remind them that their city is special, right? Or you could be the mom that is volunteering in a class and you notice that a couple of kids just didn't have a ball to play with on the playground, but you start a drive for footballs, soccer balls, basketball, tennis balls to make sure that every kid has access to the type of equipment that they want. Or you could be a person that really wants to work on laws and, you might not want to be a lobbyist. You might not want to make that your profession, but you could show up on behalf of an organization like the American Heart Association and advocate every single time you have a moment to do it. So there's so many ways. And again, I want to repeat something that I said earlier. You can either build a movement. You can be Stacey Abrams and build that movement. Or you can support the movement. You can be the person that donated money to Fair Vote. Or you could be the person to amplify the movement. The people that are posting on social media or the people walking the street to encourage people to register to vote. So there's so many ways that you can do this work.
I love it. What has your creative wheels turning right now? Because there's always something going on in that head.
There is. I will reveal a secret. So
am I getting some scoop?
Yes. So I'm updating Find Your Fire. A lot of times you don't update a book for like a year or 10 years, right?
Uh-huh.
But the moment calls for the work. We are in a different place than we were in March when it was supposed to be released. We're in a different place when we were in August when it was released. There are now these stories of everyday people who have overcome the odds during the pandemic. People who were the underdogs in elections and won by one vote. Or people who quit their jobs to run for politics because they just felt that they had to do it. Or people who led through crisis. And so as we look at the way forward and the way that we can all show up in the world, because I feel like we've been awakened.
Yes.
There's this period of enlightenment where we all want to do something. So there's some stories that must be told right now. So I'm working hard on it. And there's a great group of people that are helping me, from my book coach to editors to people even helping me crank out some of the interviews because I can't do all the things. But we are really looking to get it out, if not by the end of the year, by January 1, so that people can plan their movements for 2021.
I love that.
That's some big scoop.
That is giant. Thank you for sharing that here. I feel so honored.
Yes, I know. I've been wanting to tell you. So I just might as well tell you this way.
I love it. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me. And I guess we will just leave everyone with faith and fortitude.
Yes. Oh my God. Lead with faith and fortitude. Remember, there's always a way. And right now, there's so many of us that don't know why we are where we are. And it's because we are meant to be those leaders that will turn a moment into a movement.
Thank you, Terri Broussard Williams. All right. Are you fired up now? Is there a movement you want to create? So often, we think that a movement has to be this big thing. I tell my clients that you don't need an audience as big as Oprah's to create impact with your podcast. The same thing goes for starting a movement. What can you do in your community or your neighborhood? If you're looking for inspiration and ways to get started, I highly recommend you read Terri's book. I'll have a link to it in the show notes, along with her website, so you can connect with her in all the places. You can find me on Instagram at BrassyBroadJen. Share this episode and tag me on social media, or send me a direct message and tell me about the movement that you're excited to create or to join. Thanks for listening. Now go find your fire and get out in the world and do some good. The Brassy Broadcast is a production of the Brassy Broadcasting Company. Learn more at brassybroad.com.